This episode is brought to you by Maestro Sausage, the only sausage we use at Hot Tongue. They produce sausages specifically with pizzerias in mind, and you can tell. So if your sausage isn't hitting all the right notes, let Maestro lead the way. Ladies and gentlemen, it's your guy, Alex Koons, sitting here at Hot Tongue Pizza, and I'm bringing you freshly baked pies. Wait, no, I'm not. I'm bringing you a freshly baked episode of Pie to Pie. This one was someone I have been following for a long time. I've listened to this gentleman on previous podcasts. I follow his Instagram post. Peyton Smith of Mission Pizza out there in North Carolina. That's right. Peyton Smith is somebody that I've wanted to meet for a long time. I actually met him out in Atlanta. We kind of talk about that for the Pizza Power Forum. When I was in Atlanta, he talked, and it was a great talk. It was a true pleasure. He was visiting LA, and he took time to come down and sit with me at Hot Tongue Pizza. He is revered for what he does, and he did not disappoint when I met him and when he came down and sat down with me. Peyton is our fourth guest, I believe, who went from pharmaceuticals to pizza. Now, I think we're seeing a pattern. I don't know what it is, but something about pharmaceuticals in the pizza game. We talk about Peyton's career in soccer and how it lends itself to how he runs his business. Peyton is competitive. He talks about his team in kind of the same way he would as a soccer player, which was really interesting. There was a lot of parallels in there. We talk about his father, an entrepreneur, and the example that Peyton got to grow up and have, which is not something that every entrepreneur gets. Mission Pizza started out as a pizza truck in 2014 and now is on the top 50 list, if that means anything to you, of pizzerias in the world. One thing that I've always liked about Peyton is his confidence. And I ask him a question that he answers very well. What's the difference between confidence and arrogance? There is a fine line, but knowing that you're good at something and being okay with telling people that you're good at something is something that I'm drawn to. A lot of us, and myself included, have a hard time giving a pat on our back. Sometimes we're told to be humble, sit down, be humble. But I'm saying stand up. If you're good at what you do, the world should know. And you don't need to say it because they're going to put it in their mouth and they're going to know. We talk about views on managing staff. Peyton is someone that doesn't use traditional hierarchy in staffing. There is no specific general manager. We talk about how that works. We talk about regional pizza scenes and how those are different. His expansion into a brewery with his brother, how that's going, how that's different, and how quality control and consistency works in both of those shops. We talk about how he actually took seats out of his restaurant, that's dollars out of his restaurant, to make the experience better for his patrons. Change is a scary thing for everyone. Doing things that are right for your business and not letting your 1,000 bosses a week control what you are going to do inside your establishment. It is not a good thing to lose what you want to do based on the opinions of others. And this is a great conversation. I know you're going to enjoy this one with Peyton Smith of Mission Pizza. We also do our first ever over under. So get ready for that. Very exciting stuff here. Ladies and gentlemen, Peyton Smith of Mission Pizza. Let's go.
You know, I've had such good, my batting average meeting pizza people is really incredible. I assume yours is probably too. So I like to do it. It's fun. I don't know what it's like in LA. Everywhere I get the idea that pizza community, it's pretty small and people tend to want to like each other and get along and be supportive. New York, even for a huge place, can still feel like this little tight kind of community.
Yeah.
In LA, I don't know if that's the case. It's so spread out here.
There's a lot of positive, there's a lot of people are pretty connected now.
Yeah,
I think
cool.
that the community finally has come together and
Yeah.
everyone's very supportive of each other,
cool.
which
Yeah.
is great. I'm going to New York. We're going to New York in November.
Oh, cool.
And we're really interested to see what it's like over there.
Yeah.
Is it this, people talk about how LA has positive, or was it positive toxic positivity. You know what I'm saying? Where everything's great. This is good.
New York has positive toxicity.
Yeah. So we'll see. I'm excited. I've also never done like a pizza pilgrimage
How long
to
are you
the
going to be
motherland.
there?
A week.
Okay. I mean, New York. New York has both the worst and the best pizza in America.
There's so much.
This like anything other than like New York area has like sort of on average on the macro, like this idea that some other place has better pizza is just like a story to tell to, I don't know, for people to click on.
Yeah.
Portland's kind of interesting, but generally speaking, yeah, New York is, of course, New York's not everything. They like to think they invented fucking food.
Yes.
But the best pizza on average, I think, in America is there for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you have like an itinerary? You must have some itinerary.
We have like a half itinerary right now. Locking people down like 2 months, a month out is a little tough.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, there's places that we want to go. I don't necessarily plan on talking to all of those people.
Yeah.
But yeah. I mean, you seem to know a lot of people. You're going to go down to Truly on your way to Carlsbad?
I mean, I have a friend in Carlsbad, a guy that I went to school with, played soccer with. Chris Decker has become a good friend of mine.
Mm-hmm. It's a great friend to have in the pizza community.
He's a great guy. Yeah, he's the man. He's like the mensch. So yeah, that's kind of those are like the two primary impetus for me to be here. And then I was here like, I don't know, 5 years ago, maybe. Something like that.
Yeah.
And so I just wanted to come back. Like to your point, there's like a lot of new stuff here and some things I didn't see when I was here, some things I'd like to see again. And I've got a lot more time. So it's just like me. I'm in the car. I can go wherever I want, like all over the place.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You, did you start baking pizza in 2007?
I started baking pizza. I had a concept in 2007.
Okay.
I met Roberto Caparuccio in 2007. Yeah. And I thought, okay, he was at Amano. And it took me a few years to understand that Amano was like Fred and Carlo's place. And they put Roberto in there, and that makes sense that Michele D'Amelio was working there. And Roberto was like, "You're not building a pizzeria right now." Because I was like, "Look, I want to work. Like, yeah, you can train me and whatever sort of training certification he was providing." I was like, this is probably, if there's a transaction involved, like it's fair. I got to pay my architect, pay a designer, pay the electrician. Like, it's all good. But I want to work. Like, I want to work every day.
Yeah. How did you meet him?
Oh my God.
And where is this?
In Ridgewood, New Jersey.
Okay.
He was in Pittsburgh. And then, Fred and Carlo got a hold of him somehow, the Orlando Foods guys. Yeah. And they brought him to Ridgewood, New Jersey. And this is so in 2007, now, there's no way this is possible now. But and this is the same way I found the oven guy, is like in 2007, you could go 6, 7 page results deep on Google and find actual like real information. Yes. That's completely impossible now. But that's how I found Joe from Fire Within, and that's how I found Roberto. And it was like it was like a PDF of a blurb in like some local central New Jersey newspaper or magazine. So I called him on the phone. I'd called lots of people on the phone. And I called him, and I went up and met him December 2007. And I was like, yeah, that's cool. Let's do this. I want to learn. I need to learn, but I want to work. He's like, you're not building a pizzeria now. I said, no, that's, I guess, part 2. He goes, well, what you're trying to do is dumb. Don't do this. I'd suggest you not do this.
That's what he said?
Yeah. And I admired him and respected him immediately for that, because at a bare minimum, there was like some transaction in it for him. And he didn't care about that. He was just like, dude, you need to make pizza every day. So
were you hitting up other like people just trying to figure out how to do it right?
Yeah, I made like a list. Yeah. And at this point, I was in North Carolina. I had moved back to Winston-Salem, and I had a list of about, let's call it like 10 places. And I would just call people on the phone, and I'd like find the decision maker, maybe find the boss. And the approach was like, this is a little out of left field. I understand that. Give me a minute, and this is what I want to do. And it was like, what are you talking about? Forget about it.
Yeah.
So, which I didn't, I wasn't surprised.
Yes.
So anyway, I found Roberto. I went up to meet him. I said, this is what I plan to do. And then, when he learned my process or my lack thereof at the time, he said, yeah, this is kind of backwards. He goes, you got to get your sort of logistics happening, and then we can start the training process sort of any time. Mm-hmm. So, but doing this is backwards. Then you're just going to go back home. You're going to twiddle your thumbs for who knows how long. And yeah, I don't recommend that you do it that way. And so then I found the guy at Joe Pergolizzi, who was running Fire Within. Mm-hmm. He was in Colorado. I went out and met him, inspected what he was selling. And I bought an oven from him. I found him, I guess, in early, maybe mid 2009.
Okay.
I met Roberto late 2008. I thought I was going to sign a lease on a little property in mid 2008. Mm-hmm. Housing crisis. Banks were like, sorry, not going to happen. I knew I had a buddy, same guy who wrote the business loan that I ultimately ended up taking, small little business loan. But so I had a relationship with the banker who had enough sign-off authority to, I don't know, lose $100,000 or something.
Nice.
And this was just cobbling it together. Housing crisis, make a plan, God laughs. And then mid of the next year, 2009, I found this guy, Joe. I saw these guys in Seattle. I forget the name of their little company. They had I was researching just mobile pizza. And then these guys in Seattle, I don't know who they are. I don't know if they still exist. I don't know if they transitioned into something else. They had a cob oven on a garden trailer. And I thought, well, that's not going to last very long, and I'm not going to rebuild it, and it's a little too hard scrabble looking for my taste. And this guy was building really nice trailers. Jay Jerrier, who ended up building Cane Rosso in Texas, who just can't stop building pizzerias.
Yes.
He had a similar oven, and it was really well built, and I thought, okay, cool, let's go. And I took delivery in I don't know, early to mid 2010, I think. So it took a little while.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that was on a trailer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's the trailer's really small. The trailer was maybe about 7 feet with a 2.5 foot tongue, really small, just barely fit the oven. It was a professional 120.
Yeah.
One of those little kits. Pretty nice.
Yeah.
I mean, outdoors it's tough because they get saturated with moisture all the time.
Yeah.
But a very capable oven. The trailer was super well built, which was, to me, was the biggest deal. The oven can get rebuilt if need be, but the trailer needs to be really good. This guy in Colorado built them. So,
Top the Rockies.
Yeah, I mean, barely bigger than the width of my arms.
So I'm going to back up. What job were you working before you started doing all this shit?
Listen, the only career that could compel you to believe that being a restaurant operator is a better option is pharma.
You were in pharma.
Yeah.
You know what's fucking funny is you're the fourth guest we've had that is
No
in
shit.
pharmaceuticals or work in pharmacy.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah. I mean,
were you in sales? Or?
Yeah, I was in sales. So I was a pretty young person at the time, and I came back to Winston-Salem, and I was kind of late, with my first job. I was trying to play soccer and shit, and that was really a delayed adolescence for the most part.
Yeah.
And so I was a little late in kind of let's be an adults. Not very late, but I was maybe 26 or something. A couple years late.
Yeah. In Los Angeles, that's still teenage
Yeah,
years.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
Well, now I guess I'd be still living at home for another 6 or 7 years now. But So it was like, get a job, trial and error, get a job, trial and error. And I worked in food. I worked for a food broker, for a food distributor. And, remarkably, the skill set and the perspective of working in food distribution, I was like, this is just like pharma.
Yeah.
Because I'm not actually selling anything. I'm trying to sell to the guy that sells it to you. And at the time, this was I think I started in pharma in like 05. And at that time, it was still like straight trickle-down economics.
Yeah.
Like a sales rep in Winston-Salem, North Carolina, in pharma, like straight out of the gate is pretty much like car, benefits, salary, bonus is like $100,000 job.
Yeah.
That's not the case anymore. Not for just normal, whatever, statins and shit. So I did that, but that job, let's just say it was not for me.
I think like I might misquote you, but you talked about like having two loves in your life. It's like soccer and you always liked food, and you got to this idea that was like, I'm just not a good fit working for anyone. Like I don't
that's true.
Did you have an aha moment or like a day where you're like, fuck, like Michael Douglas and Falling Down, where you're like, yo, this is fucking it for me, dude. If your sausage needs aren't hitting all the right notes, then let Maestro lead the way. Maestro has been working closely with pizzerias for decades. They produce sausages designed specifically with pizzerias in mind. And you can tell, their Italian sausage crumbles look like they were handmade in your shop, and they will taste that way as well. With over 80 years in business, family owned and operated, the family is incredible, and so is their product. It's quality sausage with quality ingredients. Click the link in the show notes. A classical masterpiece awaits you. Back to the show.
Luckily, I didn't have a Michael Douglas moment. But I think the two things, I think the job that I had in this distributor, food service distributor, was illustrative because it was a very small company. And I mean, so small that like there was already like 2 succession buyouts like in place already with this company.
Yeah.
And a good job, like they left you alone. You say, look, this is where I think I can sell stuff. But really nowhere to go unless you have the personal relationship to go buy the company, right? In the next 10 years. I went immediately from that into pharma, and pharma is like the definition of big business, like in a pejorative way. And so those two things, saying, well, you can have a really good job, but like what opportunities are really going to be available to you in this tiny job environment, unless you own the company. And then working for this huge company that they're just dominated by their processes, ideology, whatever corporate bullshit they engage in. I will say that personally, being in pharma was a bit of an ethical conflict for lots of reasons.
Yeah.
And this idea of like me working for some big corporation that on paper could give me all the tools I need to go make my life work in a net positive way. Right?
Yeah.
But like they're just going to be telling me to fucking jump whenever they tell me to jump.
Yeah.
And the quid pro quo of that is very fucking obvious. And then my brother was a good example because he remarkably had like this really great career at T. Rowe Price. And what was illustrative about his experience at T. Rowe Price was how unusual it was that they had a corporate culture that could even tolerate a person like my brother who doesn't want to be reined in. And so me experiencing this firsthand, observing my brother and basically a bunch of smart people around me are like, yeah, that's pretty unusual. Like, don't completely screw it up, but if they're giving you the freedom to be yourself, that's great. Go do that. And then working for this tiny company with otherwise nowhere to go. So those things combined was kind of like, yeah, I don't think this is going to work for me. Like, I don't want to be rich. Necessarily, like I'll take it. Like I'm not driven by money.
Yeah.
But I want to be myself, and I'm very like my freedom is very important to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm trying to remember from Atlanta. Your dad was an entrepreneur?
My dad was. Yeah.
You think that like that was instilled in both you and your brother?
Yeah, our whole family.
Yeah.
I mean, I think I mentioned in Atlanta, like you sort of get this like junior MBA degree just by living in our house. So my dad, was just an incredibly high performer, like the smartest guy in the room, the most diligent guy in the room. I sort of gave this example, like if my dad, was a guy who thought, oh, I want to be worth $50 million when he started out of MBA school, he would have easily got there. And the reality is he would end up being worth like $300 million or $400 million. If he said, this is how I'm going to gauge my success, this is the sandbox I want to play in. But two things about my dad. One, just the way he went about his work and how he fabricated his work as a vehicle and a tool for him to live his life the way he wanted to live it. Mm-hmm. And my experience and my observation is most people get that inverted to a degree that's not really in their personal best interest, and tell themselves that having a lot of incremental dollars that aren't very valuable is important. I don't know. We're like all struck with the cancer of like gross capitalism here. Yeah. I absolutely believe that. And then the other thing about my dad was just his perspective initially, like his sort of origin story of even coming back to this town where he grew up in to basically like buy his father out of his business. So A, his father could retire and just go live his life. And B, my dad was like, oh, I'm a baller. I'll do whatever I want. I'll make this business better. I'll grow it. I'll flip it. And then I'll go do whatever I want. And the truth is he found everything he needed in the business that he had. Now, he grew it. He made it better. He did significant revenue with plenty left over to manage a family. But he had everything he needed. And he didn't tell himself a story that like, I need more, I need more, I need more. The story he clearly told himself was, all right, how do I, and he was very present, like incredibly present in his business, but also incredibly present in our life and my mom's life.
Which most people struggle with.
Yeah, no, he was great at it. He was like, but it was clearly like a whole, it was a value system for him.
Yeah.
And the way that he built his business and the way that he perceived what the role of his business was in his life was an incredible example for me. Yeah. So it's hard for me to imagine a different way. And if I had a dad who owned a business but had the opposite mindset, and he was just like busy consuming for the sake of consuming, was fixated on like work just to work, earn just to earn, didn't give me his time, but gave me a nice car when I was 16, like I would probably have a different point of view.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. So I'm like lucky as shit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just be mindful that the mic is picking up some of that tapping.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
I'm a
cool.
tapper.
No worries.
You played soccer at a very high level. I'm going to get back to this oven and pizza, but I wanted to ask you, it must have been a pretty big part of your life.
Sure.
Like just like when that was kind of coming to an end, because I know how it felt like when I was a musician and I kind of felt like this part of my life was over. Was that a tough transition or a tough pill to swallow, or are you kind of done with soccer?
No, I've never been done with soccer.
Yeah.
So I know people that are and that have been. Like they put their boots away. These are people that I played with at school. These are guys that were like professionals for 10 or 12 years, national team, MLS All-Star, played in Europe, and they just put their boots away and they're done with it. That's not me. Like I would play soccer every day if I could. I love to play soccer. It's like, I can't explain it. And so, I don't know how hard it was. It was just like, this is the reality.
Yeah.
Playing, I would say on one hand, like whatever opportunity I had when I was at Wake Forest, like to say that I wasted some measure of that is very, very true. And then to say, okay, let me wade into this idea of like, can I be a professional soccer player? There's not a whole lot of infrastructure in the United States in 1998. And so you end up with these organizations and like, they don't have any resources, professional in name only, barely. And it wasn't that difficult because for me, I have the same attitude in pizza. Like I'm not saying that the way I think is right is like has to be the right way for everyone, but like we have to do this right or we just can't do it at all. Like,
Yeah.
and that was kind of my experience trying to play soccer. And also it was just like, this is not like, I can play soccer with my homies.
Yeah.
Like this is
It's
just
not over.
not, yeah. I mean, having athletic competition is kind of incredible. I think in the way that you're able to size yourself up in a realistic way, like among your peers, either small or big at pool.
Yeah.
It's like, I think it's really valuable in that respect so that you can get tons of successes that are really personal and important. You can get tons of failures. But I also think to an extent, like being able to kind of size yourself up and say, all right, I think this is kind of where I'm at, like is really important because then you can either say, all right, this is where I need to have my act together. This is where I need to get better. If shit really goes down, I feel confident that I can probably be okay in the end. Like the self-efficacy that's derived playing sports and in it, bringing that competitive drive is hard to let go of.
Yeah.
Right. So finding another way, another avenue to guide that. But the soccer itself, like as a mechanism at that time, it wasn't that hard.
Yeah.
It was just like, this is run its course.
Well, it sounds like you've taken a lot of that off the field and into
Yeah,
pizza.
I have. It took me a while.
Yeah.
Yeah, but for sure.
So how long did you operate the truck before?
I ended up operating the truck for a long time, like 4 years. And so
How was that? You're outdoors, right?
Yeah, outdoors.
So what's the seasonality of that?
In North Carolina, it's not LA, but it's almost year
Okay.
round. Yeah. And if you're somewhere in the winter, very often you're at someone's place that has a nice setup, and you just set up some warmers, and you're good.
Yeah.
But pretty close to year round. Yeah, it's pretty temperate in North Carolina all the time. And the summers is worse than the winters.
Yeah, because
It's so hot and humid. It's crazy.
were you waiting for a certain thing? Was
No,
was
no.
4
I was
years
always
your
no.
thing?
I was always like, I mean, even now, like I'm always like peeking behind the curtain and looking for something and investigating something. That never changed. So I was always in the mode of, can I find a place to go operate? And in the meantime, like this is for the price of like leasing a car, right, or buying a Toyota Camry.
Yeah.
I can basically develop some skill because I had no skill. I had broad parameters of what was what. I had some physical, personal memory of experiencing this, that, and the other. But to say that I knew what I was doing or that I had any particular skill is just not factual whatsoever. So I had to start from scratch, and I was like, okay, this is great. And actually, in the vein of, okay, this even from me in terms of like the value proposition I provide if I ask you for your money, it's like this is a little more palatable too because I bring so much more value as like an experiential kind of thing with this neat little trailer. We pull it in your backyard. You're having a graduation party, and I may be in like stage 1 and 2 of my skill development. But it matters, but that's not really the whole reason why you're having me here.
Of course.
Right?
Yeah.
Whereas, restaurants can be very much more quid pro quo. And like you put the money down, and at least the way I think it's like, well, fuck, it better be good. Like I care about all the stuff, but I don't care about all the stuff.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting that the expectation changes when like a mobile operation, I think people they're more easily impressed. Does that make sense? I've been doing pop-ups, like just under a different name.
Yeah, sure.
And I make a similar
That's smart
pizza
to
here
do it under a different name.
Yeah, I do. It's
really
a completely
smart.
different thing. And to be able to have that connection with people again outside of these four walls, it's so much different.
Yep.
People are excited. They feel like it's new.
Yep.
It's like I'm under a tent.
Yep.
There's something way more emotionally like they're not as critical. And
right.
And they feel like they're eating something that no one knows about, or like it's just that such a different ball game. I could give them the same product across this table at the same price.
Yes.
And there is so many more expectations.
Yeah, that's really smart. To do it under a different name is really, really smart, I think. Not that matters. But I think the other piece is like, it's not wholly transactional, right? It's experiential from the jump. You have some communication with them. They get a vibe from you. If they didn't like you, they'd probably never call you back. It's a little more personal. Like I said, it's a little more experiential. The hardest part about this business, I think, is that straight quid pro quo. Like, and I'm saying like from the consumer.
Yeah.
Like if all they want is that straight transaction, like it's the most rife for disappointment. It's the most impossible job if you're the operator, to manage 1 million quid pro quos a week, a month, a year, whatever. And so to have a more experiential environment like that was my experience, 100%. And so that worked for me. And at the time I thought, actually, this is better. Like this is a better progression because I feel better about the value I'm bringing. I feel better about the progression of my knowledge, skill set, experience, like all of those things combined, point of view.
Yeah.
And so when, I was looking for retail space the whole time. I actually signed a lease in like December of 2012. And the nature of that project was the landlord had to find a co-tenant to basically make it worth their while to redo the building. The redo of the building, the rehab took a little while. So you go from December 2012 and then it's like a whole year. And we were like January 2014. So that's when we opened.
You opened in January 2014?
January 2014, yeah.
And then I heard also, I listened, like I just recently listened to the one with Peter Reinhardt that you did at the expo.
Peter's a
but
nice guy.
you said that like it was an unrepresented, like Neapolitan pizza was like unrepresented where you're from. I mean, it's all over a lot, but you know, depending on if you think somebody's doing it right or whatever.
Right.
Like Salem is not like the biggest city,
nothing's
right?
in Winston-Salem. Really.
Yeah, but
cigarettes.
I mean, yes, that's right. Delicious. It's
a great descriptor for cigarettes.
They are delicious. Surgeon General warning: they will kill you. Was it busy straight from the gate?
I would say that we had we had a honeymoon period that was quite long.
Yeah.
So in Winston-Salem is like the 4th biggest city in North Carolina, which is not very big. It's like 250,000 people.
Big enough.
Yeah, big enough.
Big enough. 40,000 people.
Yeah, big enough that you can make a living if you make the right choices or hit the right market or whatever, or you're in the right place. So it was vastly underrepresented. I probably was like the first Neapolitan pizza maker, I don't know, within 200, 300 mile radius, possibly something like that. I think the only guy really in the South, was this guy Gio from Antico in Atlanta, who's been there for a long time, making these like big format style that then Desano bought that concept. And, you have a Desano here. I drove by it the other day.
I didn't even know that was a fucking chain.
Yeah, there's not that many of them.
Yeah.
The guy, Desano, has bought this concept from Gio and said, let me go do what I want with it.
Yeah, because there's some in Texas and
there was one there's one in Nashville, maybe still is. A little all over the place, little ad hoc. But so part of it was like, here's a brand new thing. Still in the realm of pizza, which as a novice operator, to me it felt like I can irrespective of where I stand on execution, skill, perspective, whatever, just like labeling, and not labeling in a false way, but like labeling within the biggest category in food service. I thought this is a good idea.
Yeah.
So, and then in Winston-Salem, if you're a new place, you just get smoked from the get-go. And then what happens is your true baseline doesn't start until all those people have said, oh, let's go try this new place. I get the impression in lots of communities, that's not really the place. You have to, it's like getting people in the door in the beginning is the hard part.
Yeah.
In Winston-Salem, that's not the hard part. The hard part is getting through that honeymoon period and then going, oh, this might as well be our true day number one. but we've been in this for like 190 days already.
Yeah.
And resetting your expectation to that. Our honeymoon period was crazy, pretty incredible. And then it's just been pretty steady. I mean, to be fair, my location isn't great, doesn't convey a lot of value to me.
Yeah.
And that's a different discussion for a different day. But at least in the beginning, like I just had to post up and put up a shingle. And if I am good, then arguably I might have some options in my life. And if this turns out for some reason I miscalculated, this is not for me, then I can reset a little bit easier, hopefully.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm still in the same spot.
Yeah, and it was not a miscalculation. Like you have.
Probably not.
Like, yeah, like you.
Probably not.
You're on like the top 50 list, and like there's other lists you've been a part of, and people in the community talk about mission, and like it's highly regarded.
Okay.
If
you say so.
Yeah, well, it's like, I want to ask you.
My mom fucking highly regards it.
Good,
yeah.
Good. Well, I think a lot of people do too. I think people know you. I think, like, I was going to ask you, what's the difference between confidence and arrogance?
Ooh, I don't know. That's a good question. It probably depends half on just how it exudes out of you, and then probably half on the receiver. That's a really good question. I think, probably, I don't know this for certain, but probably people regard me as like a friendly guy and gregarious, and I'm interested in sort of what their deal is and what their story is. And so that means I can probably be a really confident person and still be like normal.
Yeah.
Right. And like part of the crew. Versus saying like having a confidence that, I don't know, maybe on par with mine, wherever that happens to be, or arguably less than mine, if there's an objective measure, but is like probably very self-focused and doesn't care about other people. And, so I don't know. That's probably it. But then there's probably some people. But then especially now, I'm less and less on Instagram. But like, then there's just like living your life in a public forum, and stuff I do on Instagram, is sort of living my life out loud. Like me just hanging out and making pizza every day, that's just me doing my job. Yeah. Like that's not me. I mean, I'm on display, but that's not me living my life in a public forum, so to speak. Yeah. That is people observing my work, and when that happens, people personalize you in a way that may or may not be fair or accurate or appropriate. And so it's interesting, that sort of thing, because I don't work, same as here, right? Like pizza shops generally, you're sort of front and center. Yeah. As a novice restaurateur, I thought it was absurd to put everyone behind the wall and like they didn't get to participate in what was happening and stuff like that. But I think I don't know. To the point of you can deliver the same product in a different way to a catering private client guest as you do here, and they're received completely differently. I can say something on Instagram, and probably this is not unlike me. It's probably less and less, but sort of like say to someone, you're just kind of an asshole for being rude to me for no good reason. Yeah. And some people will say, way to stick up for yourself. Some people will say, how dare you speak like that? Yeah. Business owner. I don't understand that. Yeah. Or I could say something cheeky or a joke, so I don't know. I don't want to be perceived as any way. I want to be a certain way. Yeah. Which is like, I want to be approachable and friendly, and I want to be kind. I want to be gracious with people. Yeah. But also, I think, especially in the South, like I'm quite boundaried in a sense, and in the southern part of the United States, boundaries personal boundaries don't really exist. And so people don't know how to deal with that. And but yeah, I don't know. If you're a genuine person and you care about people, and I don't know, if I played you in soccer every time and my team just beat you every time, or I scored a goal on you every time, and I'm just like a gracious competitor, like we would probably get along fine.
Yeah.
If I was just a dick for some reason and made fun of you or picked on you, then yeah, I guess that's it.
Yeah, I mean, I asked that question because I've listened to podcasts that you've been on over the years, whether it be like Smart Pizza Marketing. I think you've talked to Bruce a couple times.
Yeah.
And I've followed you on Instagram. I feel like you do a little less of maybe what I'm talking about, but like your confidence comes through. I've always wanted to meet you. I think that more people should be more confident in what they do, as long as they can back it up. I've never had your pizza, but I can tell how much you give a shit. And then obviously the company that you keep, the list that you're on, like I asked you in Atlanta, like, did you need to be put on this list to know that you're top 50? And you gave me the exact answer I thought you would.
Yeah, immediately. For me, immediately no. I mean, so the caveat is, list.
Yeah.
I get it. Big deal, honestly. And especially less of a big deal for me because it doesn't bring any real monetary value for me.
Yeah.
Like not in the town that I'm in. But it's great, right? The JBF thing is great. Top 50 stuff is great. But yeah, I would rather be judged, by a solid group of peers, right? And arguably if we took a poll of sort of my peer group, they would come out like pretty well received.
Yeah.
So that tells me like my judgment is good and like I'm in a good place.
Yeah.
So that's great. And then also, I mean, honestly, like arguably part of my confidence is, coming from a place like Winston-Salem, like even in my soccer life, like, so yeah, like if you're in a highly competitive environment, which at the time and still is in America at an elite level, and like someone is physically trying to stop you from doing what you want to do, but you're still able to do it, I would say that's a confidence builder.
Yeah.
Right. The other piece of that is coming up as a kid in Winston-Salem and learning very quickly that East Coast bias, right, Northern Virginia bias, Florida bias, West Coast bias, which is, it's not just media or food, it's literally everything, right? Like we somehow presume that, the best operator in California is somehow better than the best operator in some little town. That may or may not be the case, right?
Just like
I think the very best are the very best. I think the averages are higher in New York, DC, elsewhere. But I think the really super elite are all on the same page. Yeah. If that makes any sense. And so sort of like just living this life where I was like, I play a lot of soccer. We play everyone. We smoke everyone. We have plenty of success. And I don't tell myself a story that I'm less than because of this place I'm from, or that no one gives me the benefit of the doubt because of the place I'm from. Yeah. Like, let's just lace up the boots and go see what happens. Yeah. Right. Yeah. We'll take that proposition. Yeah. And so part of that, like, just not caring about whatever noise there is, which is much less probably than we tell ourselves.
Of course.
But I would say that's a big piece of it. Like, I just mind my business. Yeah. Like, I don't. Yeah.
Yeah. It seems that way. I just think that you can kind of, when people are overconfident, sometimes you can kind of see there's insecurity there. And then there's a difference between truly being confident, or some people they really believe in their product, but they have a really hard time expressing how good they actually think they are.
Yeah, that's
true.
What
I mean?
Yeah, that's true.
Because they don't want to, you're always taught to be like, be this way or blah, blah, blah. But I don't know. I think it's very refreshing. You were like one of the first guys for me to hear, like, who would kind of clap back at Yelp reviews and like, and you said in Atlanta, like, there's two different experiences happening. So it's only fair. And it seems like maybe you've stopped doing that as much. There's like no point. Who gives a shit?
I softened my edges.
Yeah.
Like I still respond to people. I'm a little more factual.
Yeah.
But I just kind of softened the edges a little bit. If something needs to be responded to, I will.
Yeah.
But also, you know what? When people come and they just said we had a bad experience, and the service was clumsy, and or I didn't care for the pizza. You know what I say? Like anyone can go read it. I say that sucks. Sounds like we fumbled.
Yeah.
Sounds like we dropped the ball. I'm sorry about that.
Yeah.
If we can make it right, you can email me directly.
Yeah.
If you come back for whatever reason, you can ask for me directly. I'll be there. So.
Because mistakes do happen.
Oh yeah, constantly. Yeah, it's all mistake mitigation almost.
100%.
Yeah.
I also wanted to talk about something that you mentioned, that you actually took seating outside of your restaurant to make sure that, I mean, which is maybe a crazy move to some, but it seems like, you know, going back to like your dad, like you're going to do things that are beneficial to the restaurant and for yourself.
Sure.
So could you explain what you did and why you did it?
Sure. So there's a couple things. One is my business, speaking of like COVID shifts in a sense, like just my business model shifted a lot. I went more into like a couple of tasting menus, so to speak. And so a big portion of my business now, my revenue, is people that book, which I've never done before. Mm-hmm. Well, I promise you, if in my estimation, if you book and you give us half of your money ahead of time, I have a higher obligation to your experience.
Yeah.
Right? The other thing is during peak times, in a town like Winston-Salem, people only dine at peak times, right? And then they wonder why there's a bottleneck, but that's a whole other thing.
Yeah.
And so to take the best care of the people who've committed to us up front, and then to manage in a way that was relevant to these experiences that I'm doing. But then also to manage the dining room in a way that's more hospitable to everyone. Like, because my obligation, I want to accommodate people who are standing, people who've just walked in, but I personally don't have an obligation to them. I have an obligation to the person I put in the seat. That's what I believe. Mm-hmm. And so the primary experience has to be geared towards the people that are in the seat, not like spending all our time managing people who we've not committed to yet. Not all of our time. I mean, you've seen this. You go to a place that's like all in on third party and you go there as a dine-in guest and you're kind of like, why am I even here? Right?
Yeah.
Like, the person in the seat is the valuable guest.
Yeah.
And so in order to make sure that we could accommodate people, those guests the right way, in order to make sure that my dining room and my kitchen staff were able to handle that in the right kind of way, I took seats out. And then the other piece of that is it sort of forcibly creates a longer dining window for us. Not immediately, but over time, people just go, yeah, it's impossible. 6:30 to 8 o'clock. If I don't book, I want you to book.
Yeah.
Right? Like, you know what you're booking. It's not like smoke and mirrors.
Yeah.
But that's the guest I want. So if you want to go there, like, you have to do it on our terms.
Yeah.
And then people say, all right, well, we got to come later or we got to come earlier. So it makes our life a lot easier. It doesn't diminish our revenue. It improves our guest experience in a very material way that I believe is revenue positive. It's hard to really know that, right, without some perspective.
Yeah.
And you're not going to see it immediately.
Yeah.
So for all those reasons, I took probably 12 seats out of my restaurant. And then we have this little back, very Spartan like patio space that we used to seat, and we don't even seat that. So in reality, probably let's say pre-COVID on a Friday night, I might have like upwards of 65 people in the seat. And now that number is like 40.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it makes probably a huge difference. And being able to take that risk to control when everyone's coming in eating and having faith that people will come in earlier or come in later is just kind of like the name of the game. and not being afraid of a decision like that.
Well, the other thing is, if I wasn't cash flow positive, I probably wouldn't feel empowered to make that decision.
Yeah.
Seriously.
Yeah.
And so it's very important, we can't separate the decisions we make. A person who's very cash flow negative and has to trade, right, like goods for dollars, does all kinds of wild stuff.
Yeah.
That they probably know is not a good thing
Yeah.
at the time. Luckily, I'm able to do the opposite, which is how do I do more of what I want to do? How do I, over time, like shift my guest profile? Just change my business in a way that I believe is the best thing for me going forward.
Yeah.
Right? Like this new iteration of the business. But if I wasn't cash flow positive, or even if I was cash flow positive, but I was fixated on some dollar, I couldn't do that.
Yeah.
I couldn't do that.
Is it true that you do not have like a management system? Like your hierarchy, you're the manager,
yeah.
but like you don't have a general manager or somebody like a store manager.
No. My restaurant is barely bigger than this.
Yeah.
Right? So I'm there all the time. So I can see and touch and guide everything. I will say with my staff in the kitchen, and also because for better or worse, I'm sort of perceived to be on their team. I am on that team.
Yeah.
More than I'm on the dining room team. That's just the truth.
Yeah.
Okay. And this is why husband and wives are so powerful, or partners are so powerful.
Yeah.
Because they can divide and conquer. So that's been my choice. With them, it's very easy, right? And we have a shorthand, and it's bop, 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 bop. It's like great. And I've got two guys with me in particular who have combined 18 years out of 20. Okay. And then I've got 10. So we got 28 out of 30 years on us. With the dining room staff, in all transparency, for me to say, okay, if we're going to struggle occasionally, we do a really good job, but occasionally we struggle. And if that's just going to be characteristic of one of the pieces of our business, it was a no-brainer for me that it would be that piece of the business. Now, somebody else, the CEO at IHOP, probably would tell you the otherwise.
Yeah.
But that's just not my approach. But even then, because it's so small, literally sort him out, let's do this, move them there. You guys good? What do you need? Make sure this, that, and the other. What's going on over there? Are they happy? Are you guys having a debate? What's happening?
Yeah.
One of our top tenors walks in the door and there's a big wait, right? And I've got a new kid. He doesn't know people's faces. Maybe he doesn't look up the guest data in Talk. Just sort them out. So even in that context, I can see and touch and impact everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When you do leave, you don't close the shop.
It just depends. Those guys will run service on Wednesday. It's fine.
Without
it's
you?
chill.
Yeah.
Yep. And there have been times when that's happened, but it's arguably pretty unusual, and it's probably just hyper contextual to who I might have. So I've got a really good chef with us now who sort of floats around. I don't need someone really dedicated to garde manger all the time. I need someone that can kind of float on sauté, help me with pizza, and then knock out all the garde manger basically and do a good job. And then for me to say, this is what I'm thinking about. If you can fabricate the plates and they taste good and they make sense to me, cool, let's run them. And so I have that now. But if I didn't have that, if I didn't have that person at the moment, I would say, all right, we'll just close on Wednesday.
Because you're closed Sunday, Monday, Tuesday?
Yeah, we work Wednesday through Saturday.
Well, you've never run into an issue because usually when or kitchens that I've worked in, if there's no hierarchy structure, everyone kind of thinks they're in charge.
Well, I think everyone knows who's in charge.
Okay. Well, when you're there.
Yeah, everyone knows who's in charge. And then when I'm not there, for the most part, everyone knows that, say, Evan is in charge.
Got it.
But it doesn't stop being a collaborative environment.
Yeah.
And honestly,
that's special.
this is this is, in my experience, has been easier in the kitchen, but generally speaking, like if there's a lot of, if me employing you requires like nonstop banter and back and forth, like we're misaligned.
Yeah.
And so the people that gravitate toward me and the people that I gravitate to are people that are self-directed, know what's going on. So basically,
Which is very hard to find.
yeah, I think it's
Self-starter and
yeah,
a sense of urgency.
I also think, well, yes, it's hard to find. It's also if you lie to yourself and tell yourself you don't want to micromanage people when you actually do,
Yeah.
which is probably most people,
Yeah.
then it's impossible, not hard, but it's impossible to find a person because you can only find people that want to be micromanaged.
Well said.
Right?
Yeah.
So
Well, it's a talent to be able to let go and to step back.
I'm okay.
Yeah.
I don't know. I've always had that. Probably same thing. Like you're on the soccer field, like
Yeah, you're a team player.
look, so I used to play up front. I would score a lot of goals. That's a fact. But also, like, who cares? Never in my life did I think that somehow my contribution was inherently more valuable just because it got people clapped more
Yeah.
often. Like, I disavowed myself of that for a long, long time. And so we just create a collaborative environment because these people are can go in their own direction and know what needs to be done. Basically, all I do, like 20, 30 times a day, is say, where are you at? What do you need? Are you good?
Yeah, that's usually what a good leader does.
Yeah, that's all.
I
we
love
do.
all the soccer parallels. I love it.
I mean, I don't know how I didn't observe the parallels before, but I didn't. And then I was like, 4, 5 months in, I was like, okay, this is obvious.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You do some consulting, and so I wanted to ask, and I'm sure this
A
is
little
like
bit. I'd like to do more.
Yeah, right?
For what that's worth.
Or you don't even as a pizza person or a consultant, whatever it
Yeah.
is. What do you think the biggest mistake is that people are making in their restaurants?
My general disposition about the restaurant business is that being solely engaged in goods for money is a losing proposition because Domino's will smoke you, Applebee's will smoke you, Amazon will smoke you. If the entire system is built around the whim, like to the minute whim of the consumer times, I don't know, a healthy restaurant in LA that works 6 days a week, I don't know, that has 60 seats, will do 1,300 guests a week or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Having 1,300 bosses a week is a fucking losing proposition. So in the same way that like people who need to be micromanagers, it's almost like a vibe. Like it doesn't even take any time. It's like Malcolm Gladwell, 10 seconds, who I was in line with at the car rental. But
Who was?
Malcolm Gladwell.
Oh my god.
So, but in the same way, those people, they like in 5 seconds, they can size me up as their potential manager and they don't want to have anything to do with it. Well, the guests, they kind of do the same. So yeah, I would say having 1,300 bosses a week, unless you build like just the biggest infrastructure in the world, right? And but then you have to deal with all the people that requires, that's a whole other headache.
Yeah.
If you want to have a personal business that's meaningful to you, being a short order cook for 1,300 people a week I don't think is a good idea.
Yeah.
And also just what you're putting out in the world by starting with that premise and what necessarily, inevitably comes your way.
Yeah.
Based on that premise. So reformatting the business to say, what can I do a little bit differently? How can I do it differently? Maybe sometimes you don't have to do it differently. You just have to tell a different story.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Am I willing to say no to a certain type of clientele? Right? Like if you're busy dating a 5, like the 9 of your dreams is not going to walk in your door.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yes, I do.
Like, so, yeah, I understand all of the pressures. Absolutely understand them all. Like they come from every corner in the small business operator's life, small restaurateur operator's life. But the foundational premise is, man, I want to do something that like is rewarding to me. Okay. 1,300 bosses a week. You've just eradicated that.
Yeah.
Okay. And then the only person taking on the risk is you.
Yeah.
So those 1,300 people are very happy to let you, like, worst case scenario, like shoot yourself in the head, which happens. Okay.
Yes, it does.
So that they can get a slice for $1 cheaper than somewhere down the street. And like, as a general, like American business prospect, like that's not a terrible idea, but that's called selling widgets. It's not called making a la minute food. It's just like the whole premise is just is not suitable. So if a person is open and willing to shift their paradigm, like we can work with that. If a person's having a little bit of success in this area, the answer is like, right, you're in pharma. Like this guy's never bought anything from me. He's never going to buy anything from me. You know who buys from me? The guy who already buys from me. Just get him to buy more.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Kind of thing. And I think also kind of what we talked about a little bit earlier, because it can be such a public job, even if no one knows who owns this place, but because there's a Yelp account and a Google account and everything feels personal.
Yeah.
People are overly concerned about what everyone thinks.
Well, yeah, those are facts.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the biggest thing.
Yeah. So if you're selling widgets, right, and you live in your big house on the hill and people just go to the retail store and buy the widget, they don't, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So people care too much about what other people think anyway, but Google, Yelp, Instagram, TikTok, all that stuff, it exacerbates that. And so if you don't have the ability or the skill or the ability to detach from that a little bit, well, that goes hand in hand with like having 1,300 bosses a week. Like
You're now not at the wheel. You're not driving the car.
yeah,
And you're letting voices in that
you're letting everyone else dictate your
decisions.
your future. Like it's your mortgage, man. It's your marriage. It's your kids. Okay, it's your mental health. It's your obesity. There's better ways to let everyone else decide how the transaction works.
Yeah.
But fundamentally, in the restaurant business, in my opinion, you know, small dedicated operator, and that could even be multi-unit, small dedicated operator, fundamentally, we have to set the terms of the engagement. I believe that 100%.
Yeah.
And I'm one example, but there's tons of other examples.
Yeah.
And arguably, I do it in the least likely place in America to do it this way.
I think you've been asked, obviously, this is what like every person asks an entrepreneur, like, when are you going to open more? And I've heard you say, like, I don't know if I'm going to open another mission. Yeah. But you just did this thing with your brother in a brewery because it seemed like a very, not that dangerous of a decision. And what kind of pizza is that? And to go back, what's the future or the plans for mission?
Sure. So yeah, I think without a really good operating partner, not business partner, but without a really good operating partner, forget about it. Arguably, I could do that, right? I could sign a couple leases over the couple years, go in the marketplace, hire a manager, spend some time training people, maybe go hire a really good cook or a chef. That's not for me. That's for other people. Again, I would rather like have a phalanx of like shirt printing companies if I was going to do that. It's just like, it's literally the most personal. The reason people get pissed is because it's the most personal business transaction we all do every day. Like no one gets pissed if they go to Banana Republic and the shirt they looked at 2 days ago is not there. That's your fault.
Yeah.
Early bird gets the worm.
Yeah.
Right? Because it's so impersonal. And so to be in the business of being personal, and there's restaurant groups that do a great job at this, right? But like, it seems impossible to get there, to be honest with you. And again, unless it's for the right reasons at the right time, with the right kind of structure and obviously financial obligations.
Yeah.
And forget about what it looks like if you do well. Like I've got just enough scratch that if I screw up, I've like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean I'm risk averse, because I'm not. Yeah, if you don't have a good operating partner, forget about it. So me and my brother, to your point, my brother is the most productive, one of the most like consistent high executors I know. I know lots of people. His value system is completely aligned with mine. The way we get along, our friendship is at the risk of this turning out to not be the case. Our friendship, our relationship is impenetrable. Not only that, we have systems in place that if there's too much friction, that we can just, make a decision. There we go. And then, so the first key is like having this operator. The second key is, okay, if we're going to make an effort to do another thing, it has to be sized right, has to look right, has to feel right.
Yeah.
This thing with the brewery came along. We thought it made a lot of sense. We thought it was kind of a low risk way to sort of move into a model that I've had in the bag for years and years and years.
Yeah.
Which is like just really fucking good pizza. I'm beyond categorizing pizza. It doesn't matter.
Okay.
Like the guest cares what's on the plate.
Yeah.
And they don't know what the categories are anyway.
Yeah.
Is it thick? Is it thin? Round? All square means is it's fluffy.
Yeah.
Or
They just call it
grandma,
deep dish.
right?
Yeah.
And then a round is ostensibly New York style. And to a guest, maybe there's a little puffy crust or not.
Yeah.
So they don't care. So I'm over that. And then B, being able to trust someone who knows me, knows what my standards are, has learned enough, been sort of installed in our business for a couple of years, that as he needs to, can go work, go show everyone what to do, train people ongoing, be accountable and hold people accountable. And then just the size and the scope of what we were doing versus the potential. Two things. One, the potential really good outcome, the very low likelihood of eating complete shit.
Yeah.
Okay. The more important thing to me in that was because we're basically, imagine taking my business, getting rid of saute, because pasta and pizza is a swap. You don't earn more money. It's just more effort.
Yeah.
Forget about it.
Yeah.
If you say, could I possibly scale something? And then just change the way that we bake the pizza so that it's in the best interest of the pizza maker. Because the way we do it is just difficult. And the likelihood of I've been doing this for 10 years, arguably, Jonah Hill, show me the receipts. Like the internet's a small, makes the world pretty flat. That person could knock on my door any day and say, how do I get to where you're at? And that has not happened.
Yeah.
So, shifting our mindset from like sort of what differentiates us probably in how we operate is because it's like we're fixated on margin for error.
Yeah.
And just change the baking characteristics in a way that becomes fixated on margin for success.
Yeah.
And so the third sort of angle of that is to be able to go in a new marketplace, which by any measure is one of the top 5 food towns on the East Coast, and say, okay, great, this is what's really valuable. Like whether we hit a home run here or a double, whether we have to exit, but the model is otherwise sound.
Yeah.
The big win there is like saying, oh, I know for a fact I can take this process, we can go find market-based labor and make like a really high quality product that I'm happy with. And it's like, yeah, no problem.
Yeah.
So that's the real value in that whole enterprise.
Another great answer. The Jonah Hill thing. You said this in Atlanta.
Yeah,
I think
show
it's
me your
worth,
pay
I think
stubs.
it's worth
Show me your
saying
pay
on
stubs.
this podcast because you were like, there's not a Jonah Hill, like there's no Jonah Hills out. You're talking about like
Chris Decker is fucking Jonah Hill.
That's what you said.
Yeah.
Like, and you were talking about Wolf of Wall Street. When he's like, yeah, I'll fucking come work with you.
Yeah, show me your
the
fucking pay
degrees.
stubs.
Yeah.
I mean,
but those
everyone
people don't
wants
really
that.
exist.
Everyone wants that. And those people are very few and far between.
Yeah.
Yeah. like forget about whatever narrative we have now about people want to work or they don't want to work. Who the hell knows? I'm not the social scientist.
Yeah.
But those people were impossible to find always.
Yeah.
Always. And like, you know, I mean, look, LA, like everyone in the kitchen in LA is a Latino immigrant, just about, right? So that's incredible, right? But also, unless they're doing something within sort of their sphere or their family structure or whatever they're doing, if they come work for you, they're probably not taking the mindset of, hey, Alex, how do I buy you out in 5 years?
Yeah.
They're just like saying they're working their ass off, doing really good stuff from like LA food would not exist.
Yeah.
Right? American food would not exist. Right? But it's just a different level of like, show me the pay stubs because that's where I want to go.
Yeah.
Right? Like, look, I live a very modest life. I'm driving my convertible BMW rental.
It's the only way to drive down Carlsbad, baby.
Yeah, it's LA, driving
Top
down the
down.
one.
85 degrees in October.
I live a very modest life. I drive a Jetta. I'm not a Jetta. I drive a GTI.
Nice.
I live in a normal house. I don't consume a bunch of stuff. And I'm not advocating this, but if I drove a Ferrari to work, there's two types of employees. One employee says, this fucking guy in his fucking Ferrari,
Yeah.
what the fuck is wrong with him? The other type of employee says, how the fuck do I get a Ferrari?
Yeah, right. Yeah, you're right.
So, yeah, that's, yeah.
Yeah. All right. I've never done this before, but I want to do this thing called over under. So
Okay.
overrated or
Ooh,
underrated.
Are we going to talk about pizza?
Yes. All right. So
Shit.
overrated.
All right, I have some trepidation about this, but let's go.
Overrated or underrated wood fire ovens.
Okay. As they're used in America, incredibly overrated. As a tool, very underrated.
Okay.
Yeah. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That makes perfect sense. Okay. Overrated, underrated Italian flour.
So the caveat for me is I'm a Caputo man all day long. I absolutely believe that they're the very best in the world at saying, what does the pizza maker want? And we're going to make it to get there. Mm-hmm. But there's great flour everywhere, great producers everywhere, great product everywhere. There's a bunch of different approaches. So I'm not an Italian flour zealot. I'm a Caputo zealot.
Yeah.
To be fair. Yeah.
What kind of Caputo do you use?
I use a blue bag.
Nice. And they have you ever been to the mill there?
Sure, a couple times. Yeah.
Yeah.
Great place.
All right. And
So wait, over under? Was it over?
so yeah, was it over or under?
I would say currently Italian flours are underrated.
Okay.
Probably with this like local, which there's lots of good reasons for local.
Yeah.
In this case, I want what I believe is the absolute best for what I'm doing.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right. And then last one, overrated or underrated tradition.
Oh, tradition is incredibly overrated. I'm listening to this. Oh, you need to listen to this. I'm listening to Lex Friedman.
Nice.
And
Love Lex.
yeah, so someone's going to put me like in the righty camp because I listen to Lex and because he likes Elon. But again, talk about just tell your story out loud.
Yeah.
Whatever, people can think whatever they think. It doesn't bother me. But
I just tell people I'm liberally conservative.
I'm a libertarian.
Yeah. I
by
think that
any
right in the
measure.
middle, right?
Yeah. If you don't infringe on me, like we're all good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I also
And-
don't really hold to
yeah.
my beliefs. If you change my mind, great.
Yeah, I think
I'm open. I'll listen.
Yeah, this idea that like if you change your mind as a human being, somehow you're a flip flopper. That's
Called growth, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. So anyway, I digress. But tradition is incredibly overrated in my mind. But there's a very Italian tradition in the scope of Italian. Like I talk about the tradition mafia a lot, and pizza contemporanea is the way it's actually executed on the plate is not really for me.
Yeah.
But I really like where it comes from.
Yeah.
And then, but this Lex Friedman podcast, there's some like Roman scholar, like and I'm just listening to it. It's only like a couple episodes ago, I think.
I listened to that one. They
But
talk about
they
Rome,
get into
the history
tradition,
of Rome. Yeah.
And he starts talking about how, basically like, let's call it in XYZ BC, like so-and-so says, oh, well, I have to do this. Like my personal life destiny is this because my grandfather's experience was this.
Yeah.
And to reinforce just how incredible this elevation and the worship of tradition is. We got all kinds of traditions that we should probably get rid of.
Well, I mean, they talk about in that podcast as far as murdering someone.
Yeah.
So like they did it
That
for
was exactly
hundreds
it.
of years ago that something happened, but then he felt
Yeah.
obligated because of tradition to murder somebody.
Yes, exactly. That's exactly the
It
anecdote.
also talks about like why the Romans were so successful, and it was because they didn't hold to one tradition. They actually basically stole or
Yes.
kind of like
They
inherited.
integrated.
Yeah,
They
integrated
they
all
would
the traditions.
take these people over. Basically, they would take over this area, but they would integrate so many of these other traditions.
They'd be like, "Ooh, I like that one. We'll take that."
Yeah,
yeah.
I think knowing what's going on is important, right? Like, I think having your bearings around you is important. I think having some reverence for like, how did any of this get here?
Yeah,
Like, I think that's important.
of course.
But tradition for its own sake is incredibly overrated.
And just how quickly it can be taken away.
Sure. Yeah.
Peyton, thank you for taking the time on your trip to Los
Yeah,
Angeles
my
to come out
pleasure.
here. This was fucking rad to
That's
sit and
great.
talk with you.
Yeah, my pleasure.
I'm glad we got to meet in Atlanta and making this happen.
Yeah. Cool. Thanks for your time.
Yeah, thanks, dude.
Thanks.
I hope you enjoyed that episode. Don't forget to like and subscribe. We appreciate you. We love you. Thank you so much.